blizzard had come early this year, blanketing the city in white just days before Christmas. Nathan Cross pulled his black SUV to a stop outside the old stone building that housed his company's original headquarters. He'd come to collect some documents before the holiday closure. A quick errand before heading to his empty penthouse at 38. Nathan had built Cross Industries into a construction empire worth billions. But success had come at a cost. His marriage had ended years ago. He had no children. And the holidays meant nothing more than a few quiet days away from the office. He was about to step out of the car when he saw her. A little girl sat alone on the snow-covered steps of the building, wearing a pink wool coat that was far too thin for this weather. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a braid, and her small hands were clasped together in her lap. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Nathan's heart jumped. He quickly got out and approached her, kneeling down on the frozen steps. "Hey there, sweetheart. What are you doing out here all alone? Where are your parents?" The little girl looked up at him with blue eyes that held far too much worry for someone so young. "Are you Mr. Cross?" Nathan blinked, surprised. "Yes, I am." "How do you know my name?" "Mom said to wait here for you. She said you're the only one who can help us." Nathan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "Your mom sent you here." "Where is she now?" "She's sick," the little girl said, her voice small but steady. "She's in the hospital. She told me to find you and give you this." The girl reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope, slightly damp from the snow. Nathan took it carefully, his hands trembling. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophie." "Sophie Wren." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. Wren. He knew that name. "Sophie, how long have you been sitting out here?" "I don't know. A while. The bus driver helped me find this building, but the doors were locked." Nathan felt his chest tighten. This child had traveled across the city alone in a blizzard. He shrugged off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her small shoulders. "Okay, Sophie, first thing we need to do is get you warm. Can you walk?" Sophie nodded, and Nathan gently helped her up. Her little hands were ice cold. He lifted her into his arms and carried her to his SUV, turning the heat up high. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "A little," Sophie admitted. Nathan found an energy bar in his glove compartment and handed it to her. While she ate, he opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in careful handwriting. "Mr. Cross, my name is Elena Wren. 15 years ago, my father worked for your company as a foreman. His name was Thomas Wren. He died in an accident on one of your construction sites. You were just starting out then, and you came to our house personally. You promised my mother you would help our family, that you would never forget what my father gave to your company. My mother has passed now, and I am very sick. I have no one else to turn to. Sophie is all I have in this world. If something happens to me, please remember your promise. Please help my daughter. She has no one else. Elena." Nathan stared at the letter, memories flooding back. Thomas Wren, a good man, a hard worker, who had died when a beam collapsed on a site Nathan was supervising personally. He'd been 23 years old, just starting his company. The guilt had nearly destroyed him. He'd gone to the Wren home, met Thomas's wife and their 10-year-old daughter. He'd promised to help them set up a fund for the girl's education, checked in for a few years. But as his company grew and life got busier, he'd lost touch. He'd let the promise fade. And now that little girl was a woman dying in a hospital, and her daughter had crossed a frozen city to find him. "Sophie," Nathan said gently, "do you know which hospital your mom is in?" "St. Mary's. That's where the ambulance took her yesterday." Nathan immediately started driving. "We're going to see your mom right now, okay? And then we're going to figure everything out." Sophie looked at him with those serious blue eyes. "Mom said you're a good man. She said you helped us before, when I wasn't born yet. She said you keep your promises." Nathan felt tears prick his eyes. I'm going to keep this one, Sophie. I promise you that. At the hospital, Nathan carried Sophie inside and found the information desk. Elena Wren was in the oncology ward, room 412. Nathan's heart sank. Cancer. When they reached the room, Sophie ran to her mother's bedside. Mommy. Elena Wren was pale and thin, but her eyes lit up when she saw her daughter. She wrapped her arms around Sophie, then looked up at Nathan standing in the doorway. You came, she whispered. I came, Nathan said, stepping closer. Elena, I'm so sorry. I should have stayed in touch. I should have been there. Lena shook her head weakly. You had your own life to build. I understood. But when I got sick and I realized what might happen, I didn't know where else to turn. My mother always said you were a man of your word. What's the diagnosis? Nathan asked quietly. Stage 4. They're doing what they can, but the doctors aren't optimistic. Lena's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Sophie, who was curled up beside her on the bed. All I can think about is what happens to her. She has no other family. The thought of her going into the system, being alone in the world, that won't happen, Nathan said firmly. I made a promise to your family 15 years ago, and I failed to keep it the way I should have. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. Whatever you need, Elena, medical care, support for Sophie, anything. I'm here. Elena reached out and took his hand. I was so scared you wouldn't remember, or that you'd think I was just after your money. Your father gave his life working for my company. I owe your family everything. And Sophie. Nathan looked at the little girl who had braved a blizzard to find him. Sophie is the bravest person I've ever met. She crossed the city alone to help her mother. That kind of love and courage deserves to be protected. Over the following weeks, Nathan made sure Elena received the best medical care available. He visited every day, bringing Sophie books and toys. Sitting with Elena when she was strong enough to talk, Elena told him about her life. How she'd used the education fund he'd set up to become a nurse. How she'd married briefly, but her husband had left when Sophie was a baby. How she'd been managing on her own until the diagnosis. I was too proud to reach out before, Elena admitted. I wanted to prove I could do it myself. But when I got sick, pride didn't matter anymore. Only Sophie mattered. Pride isn't a flaw, Nathan said. You raised an incredible daughter on your own. You should be proud of that. Sophie, meanwhile, had captured Nathan's heart completely. She was curious and kind, wise beyond her years, and she had her grandfather's determined spirit. Mr. Nathan, Sophie asked him one evening, did you know my grandpa? I did, Nathan said. He was one of the best men I ever worked with. He taught me that the most important thing in business isn't money. It's taking care of the people who work for you. Mom says he was a hero. He was. And so is your mom. And so are you. As winter turned to spring, something miraculous happened. Elena's treatment began to work. The tumors shrank, then disappeared. The doctors called it remarkable, unexpected, a gift. On the day Elena was discharged, Nathan was there with Sophie, who had made a card covered in glitter and hearts. I don't know how to thank you, Elena said, tears streaming down her face. You saved our lives. You saved mine, Nathan said honestly. I'd forgotten what mattered. I'd let my promise to your family fade because I was too busy building an empire. Sophie reminded me that empires don't mean anything if you forget the people who built them. Elena looked at her daughter, then back at Nathan. What happens now? Now, you focus on getting stronger. I've arranged an apartment for you near the hospital for your follow-up treatments. And I've created a trust for Sophie's education and future. But more than that, Nathan paused, suddenly uncertain. I'd like to stay in your lives, if you'll let me. Sophie tugged on Nathan's sleeve. Does that mean you'll come to my birthday party next month? Nathan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in years. I wouldn't miss it for the world. 2 years later, Nathan stood in his backyard, watching Sophie play with the puppy he'd gotten her for Christmas. Alina stood beside him, her health fully restored, a ring glittering on her finger. "You know," Alina said, "Sophie still talks about that day. How she sat on those steps in the snow, waiting for the man her mother promised would help them." "She shouldn't have had to do that," Nathan said. "I should have been there all along. But you were there when it mattered most. That's what counts." Alina slipped her hand into his. "Sophie saved you as much as you saved us, you know?" Nathan nodded, watching the little girl who had braved a blizzard to find him, who had reminded him that promises matter, that people matter, that love is the only empire worth building. "I know," he said softly. "She taught me that the best things in life aren't the ones you build. They're the ones you're blessed to find." If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs a reminder about keeping promises. Subscribe for more stories about unexpected love and second chances. Leave a comment sharing a time when someone kept a promise that changed your life. Your stories inspire us all.